Hey, welcome back to You Can Draft. So today I'm going to focus on more of a structural component tutorial, simply because I am more structural oriented and I want to put more civil structural content on my channel. And so in this video, I'm going to walk through how to create an anchor bolt, a foundation anchor bolt dynamic block. Why would you want a dynamic block? Well, it's not a 3D dynamic block, it's a 2D, and it may not apply to everyone, but in my line of work, specifically with some of the companies that I've worked for, we do elevation views of foundation that show the rebar layout of a pedestal or an octagon or grade beam or something. And in those elevation views, those section cuts, we also show the anchor bolts. And the anchor bolts have a projection, they've got a total length, they've got, one or two nuts on them, depending on what they're tying down. They got a diameter. And so I created a dynamic block for my company to use so that we could put anchor bolts in and set it and forget it, and it looked a lot better than what we had, which is we just had a kind of a simple like square to represent the anchor bolt. So real quick, a quick disclaimer, which I haven't really given this disclaimer before in my videos, but this is a single take video. I don't edit, I don't cut things out, I just single take, upload to YouTube. It's how I do my content. If I don't do it this way, I will not get it up at all because I don't want to edit my content. I don't want to sit hours in editing. So you have to bear with me. This video might take some time. I hope it doesn't, but it might take some time because this is a dynamic block with a bunch of parameters. And I'm going to try to explain what each one does as clearly as I can so you kind of get a feel for not just how dynamic block parameters work, but how you can make them usable for something. So the second disclaimer is I will not send this finished project out to anybody, so please don't ask. I don't mean to be rude or anything like that. It's just that it's a pain trying to connect with people, and it's through YouTube and all that. It's just not worth it. And the whole point of this video is to teach you how to do this so that you can create other dynamic blocks or a similar dynamic block for your purposes. The bolt that I'm going to put in here may not be suitable for what you need. And so with that being said, the bolt I'm choosing to use, which is the bolt that my company uses the most often, is an F1554 bolt, grade 36 anchor bolt. And I'll show you here from Portland Bolt's website. Well, a website run by Portland Bolt. It's actually, I got another one here. Here we go. This is the 1554. They have a few here, but we use the 1554 headed anchor bolt. Some people might use the J bolt. Some people might use a different style. It might even use a nut on a threaded rod, like as shown here. They have an example of with their threaded rod. We don't. We use a headed bolt welded on, like I said, grade 1554 or grade 36 F1554. And this is the bolt I'm going to be using. I'm going to start off by making a 1-inch diameter because it's easily scalable. Obviously, it starts as 1, and you can scale up or down to whatever size bolt you need. And I've got a chart here for the nut sizes that we're going to use. So let's get started right away. I want to start off by making a bolt. It's easiest to start off with a nice even number for your bolts, right? So we want to do 1 inch by, I'm going to say 24 inches long. So I'm going to make a rectangle. That rectangle is going to be 1 inch wide. I'm doing the rectangle command, and I'm specifying the dimensions. I want to do a 1 inch rectangle by a 24 inch, so 2 foot long rectangle. That gives me my basic anchor bolt. Okay. Next thing I want to add is a profile of the nuts. Right. I want to put some nuts on here, and I want to put a headed anchor on here, which for the head, it doesn't really matter what the size of the head is, but I'm going to make it the same size as what a nut would be. Using this chart right here, I can see my dimensions here. Okay, the width across the flats is what I'm going to start with. I'm going to go with the basic, which is like your nominal dimension of 1 5/8 across the nut, and the thickness is almost always the same as whatever the bolt diameter is. So in this case, the bolt diameter is 1. The thickness is 63/64, and they have a min and a max, and basically the min is above 1 inch barely, the max is above 1 inch barely, and the min is below 1 inch barely. So when it comes to making your nut sizes, they're always going to be, or almost always going to be the same. The thickness dimension will match your bolt diameter. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start off with a circle for my nut, and the width across the flats is 1 5/8 for a 1 inch bolt. So I'm going to say 1 5/8, which I already have. I've done this already. We want the diameter, not the radius. Make sure you do diameter, not radius. When you have this option, make sure you choose the diameter option. I know I'm moving a little quick here, but you want the diameter of the circle to be 1 5/8 inch. All right. Now we got a circle. We're going to do a polygon, and we're going to choose a 6-sided polygon from the center. And when it asks you inscribed or circumscribed, we want circumscribed because we want the flats. See how it puts me on the flats, not the points? We want the flats to be on the quadrant of the circle. And that's my hex nut. Okay, so you have a choice on how you want to show this hex nut. All right, I'm going to do, and I have what do you call these things? Snap tracking on. That's why you see these grid lines. It helps me with how I want to like quickly snap to reference lines. So I'm going to make a rectangle that's this wide, and I'm going to make it dimensions 1 5/8 wide by 1 inch tall. And I can draw a reference line here, and that can be my nut elevation or profile, however you want to call it. Or I can rotate this, and let's see, 360 divided by 6 is 60 degrees. So let's rotate 30 degrees. Okay. And I can do it this way. I'm going to trim this off. It's your choice. I personally like this better. I think it looks a little better than having the one line. It makes more sense. So I'm going to choose this as my nut. All right. So I'm going to put my nut at the top, and then I'm going to bring it back down a 1/2 inch. The projection past the nut will differ depending on what your total projection of your bolt is, and the grip, like whatever your thickness of your materials is. There's a lot of factors going on here. But I usually give it 1/2 inch just to be safe. All right, so I've got the and again, one more thing, you'll have to forgive me. I'm recreating this block from scratch with some improvements. So that's one of the reasons why it might take a little longer. There might be some give and take here when I'm making this block, but I generally know how to make this block since I made it once already. I know where the dimensions, where the parameters need to be. But right now we're just drafting the whole thing first. Okay. All right. Let's trim out the anchor bolt portion. This is the anchor bolt. Let's trim this out of here. All right, there's our nut. Okay. I'm gonna cheat a little bit here. Okay, don't hate me for this. I'm gonna move this over, say 1/8 of an inch. No, that's too much. 1/16 of an inch. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want it to look a little more visually appealing. I want this to look like a nut. And I feel like if it's too close to this line, it won't look like a nut. You know what I mean? Okay, so right now I'm going to make a 1 nut version and a 2 nut version. Right now, we're just going to do the 1 nut version of this block. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the headed rod at the very end. Now, I said this anchor bolt was 24 inches. When you measure a headed bolt, you measure it to the top of the head. So that is going to be here. So when you dimension, and I'm going to do a distance command, from here to the top of the bolt is 24 inches. You don't count the head in the bolt. Okay? All right. So here we are. Basic bolt. We don't have any thread yet, right? And the thread might vary, but we're going to allow that to be variable in our parameters. Let's assume that our 24-inch block has a starting projection of 4 inches I feel like that's a good place to start. We don't know if it's going to be 4 inches, it could be less, but 4 inches will cover you in most situations. For most, your base plates, if you've got some steel, maybe a platform, or you've got a pipe rack, or you've got anything, some piece of equipment, most of your base plates are going to range from ½ inch up to 1 inch. Some of them will be bigger. Yes, you might have some beefy base plates that are like in the 1.5 to 2 inch range, but you can account for that. But we're going to start with a 4-inch projection. So I'm going to put this, I'll take a line and put this down 4 inches. That is going to be the insertion point of my block because I want the projection to be up. Just as a quick reference, let's say I've got a pedestal and it's 24 inches by 48 inches. This is my pedestal. Okay. Come on, click. There we go. All right. And I want to place this anchor bolt. And let's put a little grout. Let's do a chamfer with a 1-inch grout. Okay, there's our grout pad. And your grout pad may or may not look like this. You usually just chamfer the edges, okay? And our projection starts from the top of concrete, not the top of the grout. Okay, so here's my projection. This is the insertion point of my block. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a bolt that stretches all of this downward and upward. Okay, projection needs to go up, but total length needs to go down. And we may have to tweak it a few times to get there, but we'll get there. All right, so let's move on. Let's get, since we now know our projection, let's get a thread. I'm going to put a line here, and I'm going to hatch. I forget I'm using ribbon. I'm sorry, I'm not used to using ribbon. We'll do ANSI. Actually, let's do user. Man, I don't use the ribbon enough. Pattern, let's go user defined. We're gonna do the lines. The angle I want to set at 5 degrees. And I want to put the distance at, I don't know, 1/16th. Let's try 1/16th. I want it to look visually appealing. It does not have to be accurate. We're not trying to make the actual thread of the bolt, because if you print this as a detail, you're going to want the hatch to show up, and if you put it too small, it's just going to bleed all together, and it's just going to look terrible. So let's go. We want it to be associative. Absolutely want it to be associative, because as we stretch this up, we want the hatch to go with it. If it's not associative, the hatch will just stay whatever size it is. And I can already see that this hatch is going to be way too small. Let's try twice that size, and it might even be 4 times that size. It might be a 1/4. I'm not entirely happy with that. I still feel like with whatever your plot style is, when you print this detail up and it's kind of small looking, you know, all this is going to bleed together. So let's go 1/4. I know it's larger than what you would typically see, but again, it's a graphical representation. I like that. We want to put it above and below the nut. There's our hatch. Looks good. I am happy with this. All right, how are we doing down here? We're looking good. Our bolt is ready to go. This is what you would expect to see if you were to put this into a detail. All right, we have a headed anchor bolt drawn out. Now we need to block it and start adding parameters to this. Before we do this though, I'm going to copy this over here, and I'm going to copy a specific distance, because I don't know if I'm going to need to copy move it a specific distance back, and I'll explain later why. But I want another version of this with 2 nuts. Again, depending on your industry or your line of work or your company specifications, you may need to add 2 bolts. In my industry, we have equipment that moves or vibrates sometimes, and that equipment needs to have 2 bolts so that the top bolt can lock against the bottom bolt and it does not back itself off from vibrations. So I'm going to stretch this up 1 inch, and tell me this was associative. Let's open my properties menu up, because that should have adjusted. Annotative, no. We told it to do associative. It says yes. So associative, yes. Well, Now it doesn't want to agree with us, but we'll manually move this into place and we'll put it back on associative. We don't want double, we want associative, yes. Not applicable, then we'll rehatch it. Did you tell me not applicable? All right, so let's go back to do a hatch command, and everything's saved, so we'll just rehatch. We did not mean to do that. Let's hatch again. There we go. All right, there's our hatch. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm messing up here. We need to copy this down as our second nut. And we're going to trim the anchor bolt out. Now, we could leave it like this, but again, just for graphic purposes and to look different, I like to show one nut different than the other nut, just so that it doesn't look like one massive block. It looks like whoever was working on this attempted to rotate the nut. Or you could leave it alone. It doesn't matter. You could leave it just like this if you want to. It's your call. It's really a personal preference, however you want to show it. When you're looking at something straight on like this, it's never going to look right. You know what I mean? So, all right. Now that we've got two nuts in here, let's hatch this now. Okay. Now, we're going to block this, but we're actually, yeah, we'll go ahead and put both in there. Let's do a block command. All right. Fun stuff. Block. We're going to call this anchor. Our base point is going to be right here. This is where our projection starts. I'm going to select all my objects. I'm selecting both because they're both going to be a part of this block, and I'll show you how in a second. Hit OK. There's our block. Now we immediately go into the block editor. All right, we got all our block editor functions up here. All right, absolute first thing we're going to do, visibility states, because I want these two as two different visibility states. I want a one nut version and I want a two nut version. So I'm going to go to parameter sets and I'm going to do a visibility set. I'm going to put that visibility set right at the top because that's the most fun place. Now that I got my visibility states, I want to manage my visibility states because I want to make the two different versions, right? So I'm going to rename this one to the one nut and the two nut. Whenever you're making visibility states, and I don't remember if I've made a video on this, but when you do visibility states, when you're making a new one, it has three options. You have hide existing objects, show all existing objects, or leave visibility the same. If you choose hide, everything disappears. If you choose show, everything stays. If you choose leave visibility of existing objects the same, what happens is if you are in a visibility state and some of your parameters are shown and some of your objects are shown, it'll just copy that exact same visibility state. But if you're in a visibility state that has like some off, some on, and you choose one of these two options, it's either going to hide everything or it's going to show everything. So leave is basically like copy the exact settings from the current visibility state. Well, we haven't done anything. This is our first one, so it doesn't really matter. Either choose leave or choose show all. It really doesn't matter. All right. So now we are in the two nut. I want to be in the one nut right now because we're going to modify the one nut. While we're in here, I want to hide this one. I don't want to see this. I don't want this part of my one nut visibility state. So we're going to go to this one here where it says make invisible. Turn that off. Gone. It's there. It's just under the two nut section, not a visibility state, not the one nut. All right, gone. All right, now we can get to work on this bad boy. This is all going to be about stretch functions. Everything here is going to be about stretch functions, okay? So let's, sorry, I'm just doing some work in my head. I know exactly what needs to be done. I'm just trying to figure out where to start. Let's start with projection and total length and diameter. So I like to go in the order that you're given the information. The way that I receive information from an engineer on what size bolt to put in is you always start with the diameter of the bolt. That's the number one thing. Diameter of the bolt should be your first available, well, besides the visibility state, the first option, the first dimension that you can control should be your diameter. After that, I typically like to go with projection first and then total length. I've had problems in the past where if the total length comes first and then you adjust the projection, it affects the total length. So I'd rather adjust the total, the projection first. So let's go to a linear stretch. There and there. I want to do the diameter of the bolt. So one end to the other. Actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Not a stretch, because that's one direction. We want to do a pair because we want to stretch it outward in both directions. So you want to see two grips, even though we're not going to see two grips. And I'll show you why. We're going to take this parameter, we're going to go to our properties, and we're going to set the grips to 0. Why? Because you don't want to manually drag this. You don't want to manually drag this because if you drag it to some weird dimension, you'll have your bolt at like 1 in 27, 30 seconds or something like that. You don't want that. You want to be able to pick your dimension, and that'll become more clear later on because we're going to use a lookup set to pick our size of bolt. And that's the upgrade. I've made this block once before where you input the diameter of the bolt, but we're going to use a lookup set in this case, which is going to make things a little bit easier and better. All right, so these X's indicate which of the two actions we're going to modify. We'll do the left one first, action selection set. We right click it, action selection set, new selection. And this is like a regular stretch command. If you were stretching this whole side of bolt, the left side of the bolt to the left, where would you put your stretch selection window? You'd start it right here on the left side, okay? Do not put it past the midpoint. You want it on the left side. Since we're stretching left, you want it on the left side of the midpoint. So here's our stretch window, okay? And I exited out too fast. We're gonna do it again, new selection set here, okay. Once I pick it, once I left click and pick this, boom. It's asking me to select the objects that I want to be part of this selection. I want these. I don't want that part of the nut. And yes, this is going to affect the way that your nut looks. Deal with it. It's fine. It's not going to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect, honestly. You could put another parameter in here that's chained to this one that stretches this one at maybe a quarter of the rate, and it would look perfect every time. But it's so much extra effort for no reason. So it's just not nothing to worry about. All right, let's grab this hatch. I don't know if we should be grabbing this hatch, but we're going to try it anyways. We definitely want to grab this line, and we want to grab this nut, and we want to grab this top piece, which I guess I have as a P line right now. That way it stretches outward. Boom. Now we're going to do the same thing for the other side. New selection set. We're going to start right here. Put our selection window and start selecting our objects that we want to stretch. Boom. Done. All right. You want to set the base location from the start point. Why? Let's put the grips back in, and I'll show you why. Let's close it and save it. We're gonna test this every step of the way to see what's happening. If you choose start point instead of midpoint, it moves one side and then the other side separately, independently. But I'm happy that our hatch is stretching. This is super appealing to me. Okay. You don't want it to stretch just one side. You want it to stretch evenly about the center. If I put a line here, you want it to stretch in both directions, not one direction. So let's go back into our block editor and select this parameter and set it to midpoint. When we do that, hit save. Now what happens is when you pick either one of these grips, it moves it outward at the same time. Much, much better. And that's exactly what we want to happen, because when we change the diameter, we want it to move outward on both sides, not one direction. All right. But I don't want to be able to manually, I don't want the user, whoever uses a block, to be able to manually pick this and move it outward. It does show up in the properties, which is nice, but if I manually move this, look what happens to my dimension. It gets funky every time. If I go to my units, if I were to set this even higher to, like, say, I don't know, 64ths or something, you're going to see 64ths. So don't do that. All right, let's go back in here. We want to take these grips off. We don't want somebody to be able to. And yes, technically, by the way, if you really wanted to use grips, you could set your distance type to increment, and you could set your increment to 1/8. Say, because bolts a lot of times tend to work in, most of these bolts are working in 1/8. This little line lets you know that these little hashes let you know that you're working in 1/8 inch increments. So if I close and I save, you'll see it's going to snap, right? And then when it snaps, it's working in 3/8 inch increments. You could do that. But why? Why? Because you don't know exactly what the dimension is, right? So instead of that, I'm going to undo all the way. I'm going to leave these grips off. And again, it'll be more clear later on when I wind up doing a lookup set, which is similar to a visibility set, but not. All right. Next thing I want to do is the projection. Let's start moving forward a little quicker. Linear stretch. I want to go from here to here. This is going to be my projection. I'm going to name this. And by the way, you want to name your parameters, especially if they show up in your properties menu, because distance 1 will be the property name. You don't want that in your properties menu. You want it to say something like diameter, okay, or projection. This winds up being the projection. We are not going to do the bolt length from this point down, because that's not the true bolt length. The true bolt length, when we do a linear stretch, is from here to here. Well, okay, so it will work, but let me show you real quick. If whenever you do a parameter, it has to be in the same plane. If you choose to pick a different endpoint or whatever, different snap, it's going to put that at an angle. You don't want that. Make sure you're completely vertical, like this here. If it's not possible, you can use a point filter. I explained point filters in one of my earlier videos in my intermediate series. You can do like a .y point filter, and you can click this, say at, and then now it puts you, where you need to be. Because sometimes you may not have, I can snap to this, but sometimes you may not be able to snap where you want to snap. So use point filters whenever you're not able to snap to what you want to snap to. But in this case, I can. So I'm going to put it right here. This is the length. Okay. I'm gonna right click, selection set, new selection set. Just want the end of the bolt. That's all I want. All right. The thing is, and by the way, keep in mind, I did the linear stretch. I did not do a pair this time. I wanted to move in one direction, down. This is the overall bolt length. I do have a little bit of a problem though. Oh, it looks like I didn't set the selection set for the projection. Let's do that real quick. So new selection set, I want it at the top of the bolt. Boom. And I need to move this visibility out of the way because now we have a problem. Let's just move it down here for now. We'll find a nice pretty location for it later on. But for now, we're going to move it right here. Okay. So this is what I have selected. Do we want the visibility to move? I don't care. Right now, it will move with the projection. Do I want a grip on the projection? No. Because again, when I get the information for the projection from the engineer, or if you are the engineer, you know the projection, I want this dimension to be entered in the properties. I do not want it to be draggable because it just winds up being a pain in the butt because it's going to give you some weird dimension. So I'm going to turn that grip off. So I'm going to select the parameter, go to my properties, and set the grip to 0. No grip. None of this, almost none of this stuff will have a grip. Same thing with the bolt length. I want to type in the bolt length. I don't want to stretch it to give me the bolt length. All right. Now we have a small problem because what happens is the projection is going to stretch all of this stuff up. Okay. But when it does that, it's not going to take the length with it. The length will stay right here at this line as the bolt gets taller. So the length will continue to work from this point. So it won't be the true length. Let's say, so the projection right now is 4 inches. Let's say I put the projection at 8 inches. Projection is going to go up to 8 inches, but the length, instead of going to 2'4", it's going to stay at 24 inches. That's not what I want. I want the length to move up with it. So what I can do is attempt to chain this. Okay. What I can do is say action selection set, modify. Okay. It's asking me for my stretch frame right now. I don't need to modify the stretch frame, but I want to modify my objects. And it looks like I already selected the length previously. So the length is already selected. Perfect. Because the length is selected and it's part of this projection, I want to chain it. Okay. If I don't chain it, nothing will happen. I want to chain that. Or do I? Let's see. Save the changes. All right. So we have no grips. We go here. And what do we have? Diameter, projection, and length. Let's just put a crazy dimension, 2 inches. Perfect. Diameter works. Back to 1. Projection. Say I want to go 8 inches. And it worked. I don't have to chain. I thought I had to chain. So, don't chain. It actually will mess things up if you do a chain. If you don't know what chaining is, I don't know if I went over chaining in a previous dimension. If you don't know what it is, then ignore what I'm saying. If you do know what it is, don't do it on this case. So, I changed my projection and the bolt length changed dynamically. All right? But it's still set to move downward. All I did was move the base point of that parameter. If I want this to be 36 inches, it's still going to move downward, right? All I did was move the base point. So back to 2 foot you go, or 2 foot 4. Okay. Back to 4 inches for the projection. We're getting somewhere. You see where I'm going with this, right? This is beautiful. We have a block now where you can start putting in information as you receive it, and it's good to go. Well, you're like, okay, well, we're done. What else could we possibly add? Well, let's go take a look. There are, if this is all you need, stop right now. Done. You're welcome. Okay. You're more than welcome to end the video. You just saved yourself another 15 minutes, I guess. I don't know how long it's going to take. What other things could we add to this block? There are 2 things we can add. One is the, actually, I take that back. This is one of those like single take things. I can't edit this out because it's a single take. One of the issues you'll notice, and I'll close this out real quick, is that when you change the bolt diameter, right, to like 2 inches, look how this bolt looks. It's all like it's getting more like, not skinny, but it looks disproportionate. Remember how I told you that the height of the nut should be the same as the diameter of the bolt, and that stays true. Again, look at this chart of the nut dimensions, and if you look at a 2-inch bolt, you look at your nut thickness, and it's basically 2 inches. So this nut needs to be 2 inches. Well, how do I get this thing to move downward? I could add another stretch parameter, which I have done in my previous blocks, but it looks terrible. It really does. So how do we do it? Not terrible. It's just more information than you need. Why create another parameter for this nut, and then you want the head to probably get taller as well? Again, we want to keep things proportional. So what do we do here? This is where where's it at? Lookup set comes into play. Okay. So we're going to add a lookup set. And what a lookup set allows us to do is modify multiple parameters at the same time. So what I'm going to do is we want the diameter to stay in our properties. The nut thickness, I don't want that to be in the properties. I want that to be whatever the diameter is. Actually, the diameter we don't want to be in the properties either. We want to use this lookup set, and I'll show you how. I'm going to put this lookup set off to the side. Again, we'll find a pretty location for it later for this grip. Maybe we'll put it somewhere in the middle. I don't know. But for now, we're just going to put it off to the side because we're just testing it for now. This is what you do. You get things in, you test it, then you make it look pretty at the very end. Okay? All right, you've got this lookup table. I have all these parameters. I right-click. Actually, I need one more parameter, the nut thickness here and the nut thickness here, or the head thickness. So I'm going to do a real quick stretch. Linear stretch. And in this case, I want to stretch down. I don't want to stretch up because I don't want it to go like past this little buffer that I give it, the 1/2-inch buffer. I want it to go down. So I'm going to do this. And I'm just going to call it nut thick 1. Okay, that's the nut thickness. I don't want it to have a grip. I don't want it to show up in the properties. But I definitely want it to start from here and stretch downward. I'm going to say my action selection set. So I'm going to right click, action selection set, new selection set, and I want to stretch this portion of the nut. I want it to stretch downward. All right. I did not select my objects. New selection set, and then select our objects. Okay, we're good to go. So now this controls this. I want one down here. So I'm going to do a linear stretch from here to here because this part's not included in our. If I modify this going up, it's going to affect the projection or the length of the bolt. I don't want to do that. I want to make it go downward. So new selection set and just grab the bottom here. Same thing we did as the other one. I'm going to take this and turn the properties off. I don't want to show it in the properties, and I don't want to show a grip. I'm also going to name this, and we're going to call this the head thickness. But I'm going to just use shorter letters. All right. So this little yellow triangle is letting us know, hey, you didn't do anything for your lookup table. It's just floating out here. All right. Well, let's get to work on that. Right click it and say display lookup table. You're gonna get this window that pops up. We want to start adding properties. And it's not that difficult once you understand the concept of what's happening. We want to add certain parameters, right? I want the diameter in here. I want nut thickness 1. And I want head thickness. Okay? And these things show up right here. Now, the way this works is you put what you want the dimension to be in these, and this is what the user sees on their side when they click this grip. So let's say I want to start off with a 3/4 inch bolt. My company typically doesn't use anything smaller than a 3/4 inch bolt. Maybe they have, but I'm going to just do 3/4 inch minimum. Okay. And I'm going to put a bunch of these in here. 7/8. 1 inch. It works better if you hit tab instead of enter. Okay, 1 1/8. I probably should put. This is text based, so you might want to put like 1 1/8, 1 1/4 inch, 1 3/8. Oops, I turned my num lock off. Come on, 3/8 inch. And then we'll stop at 1 1/2. You can go as big as you want to go. You can just, okay, I'm getting a little too fast here. You can go, I turned my number lock off again. There we go. Yeah, as big as you want to go with these bolt sizes. Okay, make as many as you want to make. For each one of these, we're going to do the exact same thing. 3/4 inch, and I don't have to put an inch marker this time because these are actual values. These are numbers, right? So 3/4, 3/4, 3/4. 7/8, 7/8, 7/8, 1 1 1, 1 1/8, 1 1/8, 1 1/8. You see where I'm going with this? 1 3/8. 3/8 and 1 1/2. All right. Just to give you a quick example, like a quick synopsis of what's happening. Whenever you pick the 3/4 inch option from the lookup table, it's going to set the diameter to 3/4 inch. It's going to set the nut thickness 1 dimension to 1 inch, and it's going to set the head thickness, to 3/4 inch, and the head thickness to 3/4 inch. This column sets the diameter thickness, and this column sets the nut thickness, and this column sets the head thickness. So whenever I pick any one of these things, this is the values for each one of the parameters. All right, so let's test this thing out. Close block editor. Make sure I didn't screw anything up. Now, I think I still have diameter in here. Yeah, we don't want this. Although I think if I did do this, let me see. Yeah, you don't want that. So one thing I forgot to do, I forgot to disable the properties for the diameter. I don't want this to show up. I want it to be controlled by the lookup table, not by this parameter. So let's go in here and set the properties to no. Don't show the properties. Save changes. All right. Now, we no longer have it. We have visibility, and we have a lookup table, which I have not named. I have not named the lookup table. It should be called diameter, but right now it's just called lookup 1. And it's also shown what looks like a visibility state. This is the actual visibility state. If I click that, you see the other one on the side of the 2 nut, right? We'll go back to the 1 nut. Now you see the visibility table, and here's what I was talking about. Here are your nut sizes. This is everything that we put in. Remember when I said this is what the user sees? This is what, when you select each one of these, it will put in whatever you have for the values. So if I go 3/4, it didn't just get smaller in the diameter, it got smaller here. Let's do a quick, I haven't set up dim styles. This is a brand new drawing, so it's not even an architectural. See how they're both 0.75? Let's go to 7/8. Look how they're getting bigger because they're associative, so they increase with it. There's 1 inch for both. There's 1 1/8. Here, let's just make this a lot easier on us. Go to modifier, dim styles, go to primary units, and change this to architectural. There we go. So you can see as I'm increasing these, it's not just the diameter that's increasing, it's the thickness, and that's because of the lookup table. It's increasing with it. Okay, this is starting to get kind of funky, and this is something that we want to pay attention to. Why is this getting funkier? What's happening here? Uh-oh, it's really getting funky now, and this could be a result of the hatch. So this is one of those things that, we're going to kind of want to play with. We want to look at what is happening here, right? This is stretching, and it should be stretching this. We got our diameter stretching that. And we'll do this. We'll call this diameter 1, and this will be called diameter. All right. Is this still associative? Yes. All right. So it should be holding it, but for whatever reason, it's starting to not hold it. Let's save the changes. All right. Let's put this back. Let's go to 3/4. Looks good. 7/8 looks good. 1 inch looks good. 1 1/8 still looks good. I'm not sure what changed, but it looks like when we get to 1 3/8, we have a problem. And then we start, so between 1 1/4 and 1 3/8, do we have a problem with 1/2? No. But we have a problem between 1 1/4 and 1 3/8. It looks like it's breaking down. It's reaching the limit. Let's go see why. Let's put a line down the middle, and let's go offset 5/8. That's 1 1/4. So the hatch is stretching out. Everything looks like it's stretching as normal. We got everything picked here. Yeah, I mean, honestly, guys, I don't see an issue. This side too looks good. Does this have a maximum set? I'm still on increment. Let's see if that fixes things. Let's hope. Save the changes. Oh, let's try to reset block. We're back at 1 inch. 1 1/4 is a problem. I'm starting to think that my hatch is not associative, and I think it's lying to me. And this can be a problem. And if you need to separate these hatches out, you can do 2 hatches. Sometimes it may be better to do that. Let's go ahead and let's actually not choose the hatches at this time. Let's see what happens. Remember I told you early on, I'm not sure if it's a good idea to click the hatches or not. And look at that. It was a better idea not to click the hatches because it's associative, so it's following whatever the border is. So perfect. All right. And you can see as I increase this thing, I mean, it's getting bigger and bigger. Again, it doesn't look perfect when it comes to the nut. If you really, really want to get fancy with it, I will show you at the very end of the video how to make this thing look fancier, but I'm not going to do that right now because it's just not worth it. But if you really want to have this thing scaled to where, like, you know, it looks more proportionate, you can. Because on a 1.5 inch bolt, actually, I should do polygon. We're gonna do circumscribed to here, 30 degrees, and why did I do that? I didn't want that. And the nut size for this one is going to be across the flats for a 2 inch, 3 1/8. So diameter 3 1/8. Oops, I did a radius. Diameter 3 1/8. Oh yeah, I guess that is it. No. Oh, I'm an idiot. Sorry. 1.5 inch, not a 2 inch bolt. You probably caught that before I did. 2 3/8. Is that what this is? This is 2 1/8. So it does kind of change a little bit. It doesn't work exactly, because what I'm doing is I'm essentially stretching this thing outward evenly. You could, if you really, really wanted to. Okay, so look at this dimension right here. This dimension is 2 1/8. This chart says that the width across the flats for a 2 inch bolt, for a 1.5 inch bolt, is 2 3/8. If you really wanted to, you could put a separate parameter. That does this. Linear stretch pair. Look for a linear stretch pair. Stretch pair. That goes from here to here. And you could pick just the nut. Same thing for this side. Just the nut. Okay. Turn these things off. And then what you want to do is you would want to make sure that you remove this stuff from the selection set. Maybe not that, I don't know. But modify, remove from the selection set. Oh, did I do the wrong thing? I did. Sorry. Modify, remove. And remove this, and remove that. Then what happens is when you go into your lookup table, you can add a property, and you can add, what do we call that? Now it's called distance 1. But that's the nut thickness. So I can go to my chart over here, and I'll just voice this out. This one is 1 1/4. Then we've got 1 7/16. Ooh. Let's try that again. I accidentally hit the wrong thing. I was editing the wrong thing. Add a property, distance 1. So this is 1 1/4. 1 7/16. 1 5/8. 1 13/16. Let's see, 2 inches. 2 3/16. And 2 3/8. Hit OK. Boom. Done. Take it off the properties. And this is if you want to be like really accurate. You don't have to do this, but this makes it like close block editor, save the changes. Uh-oh. Do you know why it's doing this? Because I forgot to set this to midpoint, not start point. There we go. Now notice how I'm not pulling these with it. These could be pulled. If you want to have it, I don't know, in thirds where everything, actually it is in thirds right now, but you could have these stretched out, you know, separately or whatever. But you get my point, right? As we adjust this now, it's going to adjust this to be exactly whatever the chart says. So the chart says for 7/8, this is supposed to be 1 7/16. So when I measure this, there's 1 7/16. Right? And as I go through them, it'll keep changing that. You know, a 1 inch is 1 5/8, and this is 1 13/16, and it matches the chart. You can do that. Again, it's how you want it to look. 2 inches for 1 1/4. This is how it's supposed to look. Okay, so we've got that in play, and we've got our lookup table. Now you can move that lookup table to a pretty location. You can say, oh, you know what? I want to move this lookup table to, I don't know, somewhere in the middle, like here, and I want it down there, and that looks all pretty. My visibility's fine where it's at, or whatever. I don't care. Or you can put your this right here, and then what you can do is your projection. When you can go to modify, and then you modify the selection set, you can actually include the lookup table in your selection set. Now, this little thing right here, as you increase your projection, the lookup table goes with it, and also the visibility state. They're both part of it. They can both go with the nut and all that. So as you adjust this dimension, those grips move with your projection. Fancy, right? Now they're in kind of a pretty-ish location. It's up to you to determine where you want to put those grips. So we are done with the block as best we can be on this portion of it. All right, stick around if you want to see the 2-nut version. All right, we go to the 2-nut version and nothing exists. Do we have to do everything all over again? No. No, we do not. What do? Well, you erase this one. Do we want to erase this one? Not really, actually. Yeah, we kind of do. Let's see. Let's stretch this down to here. Okay? We want it to look like that. We want this portion of the block to be new. This portion and this portion. Screw it. Let's just do the whole thing. We want to erase everything. What am I doing? Like this. Now, we want to move this back over 12 inches. Remember, I told you that would come in handy later on. We know we can move it back 12 inches because I moved it 12 inches in the first place. All right, now we can swap between the visibility states, right? But I'm missing all my parameters. Oh, what happened? Well, when you delete something in one visibility state, it deletes it in all visibility states. So if you don't want to show something in a visibility state, don't delete, do make invisible. We can make all this stuff invisible. Make it visible. Come on. Let's explode you. There we go. All right. Move this over 12 inches. Remember this hatch issue we had earlier? Let's go ahead and rehatch this. All right. Now, what we can do is make visible all of the parameters. Everything's visible. Okay? Now that everything's visible in this visibility state as well, we can modify each one of these parameters to also affect this stuff. The projection, I want it to affect this and that. We need another nut thickness. Remember how this one moved down? This nut thickness now needs to not only affect this nut, it actually needs to affect this one as well. So we're going to do this. We're going to make the selection window bigger. We're going to make sure that it still affects this one. It does. Oh, we don't want to grab the hatch. I think I accidentally grabbed the hatch over here. Modify, I did. We're going to remove the hatch. Done. All right. The total bolt length, again, we want to modify that. My dogs are barking because they think somebody's home. Here and here. Good. So we just want to make sure that all the new objects in this visibility state are covered by the existing parameters. The diameter, not covered. Okay. Diameter, we want to affect this and this piece up here. The nut is being controlled by that distance 1. This, and that's it. Same thing on this side. Modify this, this, and this. This is going to modify the nut. Both nuts this time, and the head. Same thing for this one. I know this is kind of tedious, but you got to do this. You got to go and add, whoops, not that. We're doing the nut only. Okay. I believe that's everything. We're going to find out when it's all broken in the end. And I think last time I forgot to apply this. We need to do a new selection set. No. We don't want to do this. We want to modify. We want a bigger selection window. Why? Because we forgot to edit this down here. This is selected, but we forgot the bottom one. And look what I just... There we go. Perfect. I had to make that visible. It disappeared. All right. Last one. Modify selection set. I totally forgot to grab you, my friend, down here. And we're good. I know it seems like a lot, and I'm moving a little fast. Hopefully you're able to put things together, but basically I want these parameters to apply to both visibility states. If I make an object in this visibility state, it does not show up in this visibility state unless I make it visible. Okay? So what I have are 2 copies of this anchor bolt, one in the 1 nut and one in the 2 nut. And there they are, right? There's 1 nut here, 2 nut here. But I have parameters controlling both. I'm missing one more parameter though. I'm missing a nut thickness for the second nut. And the reason I put this here, when I say modify, the reason I put it around the whole thing and not just like right here, I did a selection window like this. I didn't do a selection window like this because I don't want to take this and stretch this down like that. I want to stretch this whole thing down like that. So I want the stretch window to be like that. Let's do one more linear stretch here. Let's call you nut thick 2. There's my lookup table, with that out of the way. New selection set here. Select you, but don't select the hatch. And back to our properties, and let's don't show properties, don't show grips. Back to our lookup table, because now we have a new parameter. Display lookup table, add a property. We're going to add nut thickness 2. Nut thickness 2 is going to be the same as, I wish I could copy all of these. I don't think I can. I can just like Control C, Control V, but it won't let me like drag a selection window down to grab all those. All right, perfect. I think we're done. We can go ahead and rename this to flats. That way, when you look at your lookup table, it says flats. So that looks good. I like that. I believe you can rearrange these. Yeah, I just put flats at the end. All right, close, save. We now have a 1 nut and a 2 nut, right? Our dimension changed. Oh, but our hatch. What happened to our hatchy hatch? Our hatch is not associative. Let's go back in. Always error checking. Always error checking. Can't work. Let's redo this. Hatch again. Okay. Make sure that the 2 nut has a good hatch. Yes. All right. Close. Save. Reset block. All right. Let's try our lookup table. Let's go to 1 1/4. You see, I see a problem here. Something's happening. Something got doubled up here. So let's look at diameter. Diameter's taking care of that. And I accidentally selected that. Modify. Remove. I did not mean to grab that. Okay. And then diameter grabs that. Is diameter grabbing this one here? Yeah, it is. Let's try. Let's see if that helps. Much better. I don't care about the dimensions anymore. Let's look at the two nut, right? Make sure we're still good there. Uh-oh. I see a problemo. We may have to rehatch that. And it happens. It happens. Sometimes you got to tweak the hell out of this thing until you get it right. They're delicate. These blocks are delicate, man. Save. Two nut. Look at that. As soon as we go up a notch, this thing becomes like disaffected. So check our one nut, check our two nut. And that's why I said, this is why I said the video might take a while. You got to bear with me here because these dynamic blocks get tricky. And I want you to see the errors that I'm making so that when you're troubleshooting, you can troubleshoot it with me and you can see, because you might make other dynamic blocks of other kinds and you might be like, man, why isn't this working? You can see, well, back in this video, we were having these issues and here's what we did to fix it. So, and hatches can be a tricky one. Let's see here. I did not mean to select all this. Oh no, that's the select. That's the lookup table. That looks about right. I'm grabbing everything here. And what does this one grab? The same stuff. So we got two modifiers for our hatch. So this one is stretching everything down, and it's not going with it. And this one is stretching everything down. Associative, yes. So if you have trouble like this, it could help to draw a rectangle. Like this. Nobody sees it, right? Do a hatch. And then apply your settings to that rectangle. Remove. There we go. Same thing here, modify. Remove, close, save. Oh, I forgot. This has to be affected by the diameter tool. By the diameter parameter. Look at me rhyming over here. Pick that. And pick that. So I'm just modifying each one of the diameter actions here on this rectangle that I added. My goal here is that the rectangle, that I hatched the rectangle, not necessarily the space in between. I added this rectangle to hatch the rectangle. My hope is that by modifying the dimensions of the rectangle, like if I take a rectangle here and then I go and decide to move that, the hatch goes with it. Okay? My hope is that by having a rectangle rather than a space like this, and I do pick points. Like sometimes this works, but in my case, it's not working. Like when I stretch, it's like not keeping it. So I'm hoping that the rectangle will help keep it better. So we're on the 2 nut and we're gonna go 7/8. That looks good. That's not good. Okay, this line is not included. So let's just get rid of that line. I don't need it. Why? Oh, actually. Yeah, I don't need this line. Save. Reset block. Okay, so I needed that line. But I have a better idea. Since this worked so, this rectangle worked so well on the 2 nut, let's add it to the 1 nut. Get rid. The line's already gone. Put this here. Hatch. Not. I want to hatch the. Where's object? And then I'm gonna do the same thing. Have my diameter affect this. And have my nut thickness affect the top of it. Done. Save. Okay. All right. Let's go down or up. Okay. Let's go down. Excellent. There's always something. Somebody's always got to mess with me. All right. Let's go here. Modify this top line, which it looks like it is. It looks like it is. Okay, there were apparently 2 lines. So let's make sure that we're still modifying the line. This stuff will creep up on you, man. There were 2 overlapping lines and I was only modifying one of them. Like, how would you even notice that? And now my hatch is messed up. We have to rehatch because I took away the boundary. Pick points. Close block editor, save. It's a lot of trial and error. I mean, I know how to do this stuff, and you'd think I would have this like all figured out, but you just forget stuff, and little things happen that creep up on you. You go through each one of our sizes, and it looks like we're doing good. I mean, everything's looking like it's increasing and decreasing like it should. We go to the 2-nut, and nothing happens down here. The 2-nut just affects the top. We go to the 3/8, so we went bigger, but now my line's missing, so I got to go add a line back to that one. Or I have a better idea. I'm gonna zoom all the way in here, and I'm gonna say go to the 2-nut, and I'm gonna say make visible. And there's the line, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's gonna be there. Now the 2-nut doesn't like what I just did, so I'm gonna rehatch the 2-nut. Close it, save it. And I'm moving super fast. I'm fixing things. Whenever you mess with a hatch boundary, it kind of destroys the hatch. So you have to reset the hatch boundary and rehatch it. Let's make sure I didn't mess things up with my projection. And I bet you I did. Yep. Why? Because when I added these new hashes and stuff, I did not make sure I selected all this stuff. Like, this has to move up, not just stretch up. Same thing for the 2-nut. When we come over here, the projection has to affect everything, and this hatch is not included, but it is now. Uh-oh, what happened? Stretch window for the 2-nut's not correct. Stretch window needs to be down here, not way up here. So if you look, the stretch window is right here. That's right where that second nut would be. So we're going to do a modify. And what I'm going to do is modify the selection window, the stretch window. Super close down here. Now we won't have any issues. And we still have issues. But why? Let's go back to the 4-inch, see what happens. Well, I know exactly why. Because we have not selected this circle. This, if you remember how we have a rectangle here, and then on the 2-nut we have a rectangle here. This projection is not affecting this rectangle. Don't want the hatch. Now it is. Same thing with the 1-nut. Make sure that we're affecting this rectangle. Okay. Let's try. This should be everything. Okay. Let's double check our bolt thicknesses. Looks good. Go back to the 1-nut. So when you choose the 1-nut, all you should see is just the nut changing. Now, there's one other thing we may have an error with, and that's going to be the properties. How many things are in the properties that we don't want to see? We've got the diameter. We don't want the diameter to show. Actually, no, we do want the diameter to show up. This is the lookup table now. So I can select like from the properties, I can select the diameter from the lookup table. We do want the projection, we want the length, and we want the visibility. So I can choose, I can say, yo, I've got a beefy bolt, 1.5 inches, and this thing is 4 feet long. and it's a double nut with a 12-inch projection. So now, when I've got this beefy 4-foot by 6-foot pedestal, because some piece of equipment is sitting on top of it, and I chamfer the top, I can take my bolt and I can move it right to where the projection is, or right to where the insertion point is, and there's my bolt. Maybe I've got two of them. Maybe they're separated by, I don't know, 12 inches. I can copy this over and say 12. Oops, not 12, 24. So 12 more. Now, how does this work from scratch? Let's say you have your block created, right? So I want to insert, anchor. It brings it in fresh, okay? Fresh little baby block. What do? Go to our properties, enter the information as told to you by your engineer. The diameter actually shows up at the top now because it's no longer one of these. It's you might be able to do a Batman on it. I don't think so, because Batman applies to yeah, no, it applies to attributes only. I think you can go into the parameters manager, which is here. So the parameters manager, action parameters, our diameter is there a way to, you can delete them, but you can't really organize them. What did we call, these are action parameters. That's a lookup table. Yeah. I don't really remember off the top of my head, and I really apologize for that, how to sort your parameters in your properties menu. Discard. So anyways, let's just run through it, right? So you can use the grips or use the properties menu. You can say your diameter, I've got a 1.5 inch bolt. I know that I've got an 8-inch projection, and my total length is going to be 48 inches, and there's your bolt. Now you can move it over 12 inches and copy it that way 24 inches, and you probably won't have something like this. It probably looks something different, but you know, and oh, wait a minute, it's got to be a 2-nut. So you go to your 2-nut, and there's your block. Like, now you have an efficient anchor bolt block. The only other thing you could do that I've done to my personal block is you could add sleeves, because a lot of times with your bigger bolts, up to a certain size, you're gonna have sleeves. I'm not going to do that for you, but I'll show you real quick what you would try to do. Like, you basically, I always do like a 3x10 sleeve. So I'd say 3 inches by 10 inches. And you put that right here. And essentially you just apply stretch parameters. Just like the diameter one, you apply stretch parameters, you know, to linear stretch. Who am I kidding? I'll just do it real quick. Here, not linear stretch pair. Here. And you do linear stretch singular down to here. You don't show these in the properties, so you say no. You say no grips, and this is going to be sleeve diameter, sleeve length, and all you're going to do say is new selection set. Turn off my snaps. Pick this side. New selection set, pick this side, sleeve length. It's super easy. I mean, you're literally just modifying a square, honestly. And there's your sleeve. Say close, save the changes. What did I put this under? The 1-nut? It's only shown under the 1-nut right now. Right? And so you can just change this with your, you know, the sleeve stays the same size no matter what this is. Let's just say we've got a 1.25 inch bolt. And you got a sleeve, and let's say your sleeve needs to be, I don't know, 18 inches. I completely messed up. The sleeve, you do have to show the properties because we're entering this information manually. So say yes, show the properties. Then when you select these and you come over here and you got your sleeve diameter and length, you can say, oh, the sleeve diameter is fine. Sleeve length needs to be 18 inches, and it's set. You know, or sleeve diameter's got to be 4 inches or whatever. Oh. You can, if you've been paying attention, you know what just happened there. It moved one direction because my sleeve diameter was not set to midpoint. Save, and now it looks proper. Oh, I've got a 12-inch sleeve. That's not a thing. I'm just saying. But that's so now you add sleeves. But you're like, oh, I don't want to show sleeve. How can I like disable it? Just set these to 0. And you can always bring them back, 3 and 10 or whatever I had it at. I don't know. If you don't want to show them, just put them at 0. Sleeve gone. It reduces it to a little infinitesimal point, and you're done. So, long video. I applaud you if you have stuck around this long. I know I speak fast. I apologize for that, especially the further I get into it. I know I move fast. I try to start off slow, but I move faster towards the end of the video because I feel like at this point you've kind of gotten the gist of things. You probably even fast forwarded back and forth. I do with all my videos. Like if I'm watching somebody's tutorial, I'm skipping back and forth. But I hope this helped you in some way if you do work in civil structural design and you need to create quick anchor bolt blocks. The creation's not quick, but once you have it created, I mean, how easy is that? You just insert your block right where your top of concrete is, and you just come over here and adjust your parameters. You're like, oh, and engineer says it's going to be a 1 nut with it's going to be a 3/4 inch bolt with a 3.5 inch projection, and my total length is going to be 18 inches, and it's going to have no sleeve. Done. There's your bolt. Easy. Again, there is ways to modify this. I'm a little exhausted at this point, but if you learn enough about dynamic blocks, you can make it to where this stuff is adjustable too. Or like I told you earlier, if you have a preference and you don't want to deal with this, just put the one line down the middle like I did on the 2 nut here, and just call it a day. You don't have to worry about these little lines on the side, and that'll cover it. So I hope this helped. I know it's a lot to take in. It's not that complex of a dynamic block, but we do have okay, never mind. It kind of looks like it is when you look at it like that. But it's got a number of parameters. There's a lot going on, and it's all stretch parameters. We're not doing anything crazy. We're not doing rotations, arrays. We're not using constraints, any of that kind of stuff, or even move parameters. We're just doing stretch parameters literally all over the place, taking a bunch of rectangles and stretching them into place and trying to make sure that the hatch here maintains its associativity, so that way it looks pretty, at every diameter and every length. So I hope that helps. Thanks for sticking around. I'll talk to you next time.